Welcome to my experience racing with some of the drivers who made it to the FIA Gran Turismo Championships in the Americas region. As y'all know, I'm by default in the Americas region, and if y'all have watched some of the previous special tapings I've done, I've sold actual racing against them, like the actual races themselves and not just a picture. But the reason I'm showing this picture instead of an actual race is, well, some of those races, as I said, are special-tated, and I will link those in the description, and I won't go into too much detail into them, because they already had their own videos. But what I will go into detail here is stuff that wasn't exactly as mentioned, or what came of things that I did mention before in this video. First, I'll start out with the picture that's here. This picture is of one of the races I did special-tate, being the FIA Nations Kart race, and that was one of the ones in the official tournament. It wasn't one of the exhibitions, and I managed to get fourth in it in a pretty stacked field. That is one of the ones I special-tated, so again, y'all can go and watch that one if you want. But from what I can remember, the drivers in that field who made it to the FIA Gran Turismo Championship Americas region, that's quite a long name. I'm just going to say Americas region final, to make that short. Americas region final that were in this race is FT Hellsfire, FT Solid, and Jim Facadoo or something like that. I guarantee I'm pronouncing some of the names wrong. But nonetheless, I guess too, I'll link in the description the list of the drivers so y'all can see for yourselves who made it. And as y'all see here, I also finished fourth. From what I recall, I was actually able to beat all but one of the drivers I mentioned. And that particular driver that finished higher than me, that made it to the Americas Region Finals, is Hellsfire. And I actually think that overall, I somewhat, in a very small way, helped them get here. Here's the part that's kind of the more, what ended up happening of something that I already went into detail, the actual event itself. After that event ended, I noticed that overall he went up in the championship standings, because he won the race overall. And if y'all watch that special tape, y'all saw that I was right in the mix with that race too. And about midway through the race was actually leading. And as I said in that special tape too, I knew that I had enough pace where I could stay up with the leaders because of the draft. But I noticed I was about a tenth or two slower while I was in the lead. So I just backed off because I wasn't competing for points. And I don't regret that in the slightest. Realistically, I doubt I would have won too, just for the skill of the other drivers who were downright faster. Would have eventually just gone around, and that's fine. So I just let them around to begin with because I didn't want to cause any wrecks or bottleneck or anything like that. So ultimately, I guess I can say sorta kinda that I slightly helped Hellsfire get to the championships. But I guess I can also say I slightly hurt the overall rankings of the other drivers who made it too. Hopefully I didn't end up actually getting anyone out of the championships. I don't think I did from what I saw of the points. I did not. But yeah, that was this cool experience, and again I special-tated that race, so that's definitely worth watching. But there's some other experiences in which are harder to watch now, or can't actually be watched at all. The one that's harder to watch, it is special-tated, but it is of the closed beta, so there's not a direct capture video of it, is the one time I actually beat IOF-RACING in a race. It was literally down to the wire, and again I'll link that race in the description too, so y'all can watch the race itself. But there's no direct footage out there, unlike the FI race that's pictured here. I uploaded the actual video itself of the race on GG Sport itself. Fallout of that race. Fallout kind of sounds like a negative thing, but just meaning what happened after that race. Actually, the next time I raced with IOF Racing after that race was in Gran Turismo 6. that was nearing the end of GT6 days, and Z28 who's another driver in the Americas region final, ran some rooms back on GT6 after the closed beta ended and before the main game came out. So I was in a room at Brands Hatch GP, racing against both IOF-RACING and Z28, and Z28 was faster than me as it should be, and IOF-RACING was way faster than me as it should be. So actually, I can't remember how the qualifying order was exactly, but one of the races actually started ahead of both IOF-RACING and Z28. But if I remember correctly, Z28 was alongside me. I think I started third and he started fourth. So I basically just let him get around in one turn. But I think if I remember correctly, IOF started pretty much dead last. So at one point I was running in about 5th place, and I noticed, well, you know what, IOF, I was able to actually win against him one race, and it was really competing good race. So I'll give respect to the very much faster driver. And I just downright let him by. And if I remember correctly, that race, I guess, is on Z28's channel, but honestly, I'm not going to link that one in the description because I cannot remember the actual date of that race, and it was a very long time ago as well, too, so I don't know what race it would have been during that live stream as well, but nonetheless, y'all may have seen it live, maybe, or y'all maybe have been in that race, who knows. But nonetheless, if I remember correctly, IOF had to battle through the field. By about lap 2, Z28 was already in first. So it literally came down to the wire of the point of, I think IOF beat Z28 by about a car length to the finish line. If I would have stayed and not been as nice to IOF, that might have not ended up being a nice battle for all the viewers of Z28's channel to see during that point. So that's just something cool too. That's something I've always tried to do, is if drivers are respectful to me, especially when they're faster than me, I will always let them around. I'm as competitive as the next person, but I also am aware of my limits. I know I will never make one of these America's finals, but it's very much an honor that I've raced against some of the drivers in the America's final. And now to the events that aren't shown at all, because they're just straight up, from what I can tell, no videos of them. I may look later and there might be something, but I'm going to say it's very iffy in case there is. There was a time in, I'm going to say 2011 or 12, I'm not certain on the exact date, but let's just go with that. Before TRL Doodle was with TRL, if I remember correctly, and his account was just Doodle Monopoly. At that point, he was already arguably the best driver in America's region, and as y'all know, he's only 21 years old now. So, well, 6 years ago, he was 14 or 15, depending on how long ago that actually was. 6 years exactly before. I don't remember the exact date, but let's just say he was 14, and he was already about the best there was in America's region, arguably. And there's 2 events I actually had that benefited me, racing against or just being involved with Doodle Monopoly back then. One is there was a Gran Turismo 5 seasonal event, time trial, which was 400 performance points, 1969 and older production cars at Autumn Ring, the full version. From what I recall, that is one of Doodle's favorite / best tracks. And you might have actually overall downright won that entire time trial, meaning first in the world, maybe. I can't remember the exact result, but I guarantee it would have been really, really high in it. But nonetheless, to the point of how I was involved with that. He was actually able to get the car that he used down to 400 performance points, that car being the Lamborghini Miura. If y'all remember in GT5, and 6 to an extent too, but with different cars, you could get a car infinitely low performance points depending on how many miles it had. I think it was literally something along the lines of 80,000 miles before the Lamborghini Mira got to 400 performance points, and Doodle somehow obtained the car that had that. So then remember GT5 feature, which you could actually share cars back then. So he shared a Lamborghini Mira for anyone on his friends list to use, and lo and behold, I was on his friends list. I'll get to more details of how that somewhat happened earlier later in the video, like how I was able to get on his friends list at an earlier time, and I'll mention that next. But I'm just mentioning this first for a reason that again I'll go to in a bit. But anyway, I used his Mira that he shared, which also means it was shared with the tune that he used on it, to get literally my highest ever finish in any Gran Turismo 5 time trial. If I remember correctly, I finished 138th in the world, which isn't all that much compared to my best in GT6 being 29th, or in GT Sport I have an entire circuit experience world record, but that's still quite an accomplishment given that I did that in roughly again 2011, 2012, I can't remember the exact time. But anyway, that's that. Doodle Monopoly pretty much helped me get my highest time trial ever in GT6. How all that somewhat started. I've sort of mentioned this story before, but not in detail. I'm going to say this was definitely 2011. During that time, I would say overall the racing that I did the most in GT5 was Dirty Racing. And probably the room that I joined the most was usually hosted by Juice 190, and all of the people raced with him as well, which have been in a few videos on the channel. I won't link a video in particular with that, because one of the reasons I raced with them was the atmosphere which we raced with, and it's hard to capture that in a replay of the race. Y'all had to be there to experience it. I'll just say it was an experience, and for anyone who happened to be there watching this video, if there is anyone, y'all know what I'm talking about. But anyway, lo and behold, I've always tried to be as friendly as possible with a lot of the fast drivers, especially the Americans, in which I can understand. So I've complimented Doodle, and back then it was Immortal Pilot, who was arguably the best, and then there was, I think L-Shooter was always good as well, and I've sent them messages saying great job and all that, and eventually during that time Doodle Monopoly actually added me to his friends list on that account. That was before the TRL days, I think. So I was actually already on his friends list. So later on, once Juice 190 started doing the dirty rooms and Doodle Monopoly was on my friends list, well, if you think about it and you know kind of how both of these people are, the weirdest combination of things happened. Doodle Monopoly, arguably the fastest driver in the entire America's region, even back then as well, joined one of Juice 190's dirty rooms because I was in it, got it via the friends section, and actually raced for a few hours one time, and actually again later on joined again and raced for about a race or two, but not that long. The one I'm mentioning in particular is one that was a few hours, because I remember there was 6 or 7 races he did. The very first race he was in was 400 performance points. It wasn't any car in particular, but it was 400 performance points at the track in which I cannot say that I mentioned before, but ultimately Monaco. It's that track, the one in the Iron Man movie. Y'all know what I'm talking about, but that track. And he entered in a Mercedes SL Gullwing, meaning the 1954 one, the kind of small one and the kind of slow one. It looks pretty and it was cool for the time, and it doesn't compete against the best cars in the world. If I remember correctly, I used a Suzuki GSX R4 because even at a dirty race, I was still competitive and I still wanted to attempt to finish ours and Doodle Monopoly. Well, Doodle started that race pretty much near the back. He won the race. by about 10 seconds. I finished second by about 5 seconds. Beyond literally the second turn of the race, I didn't see Doodle Monopoly the rest of the race. And that is with Boost on strong, and everyone else purposely trying to wreck him, because even the dirty racing crowd knew who Doodle Monopoly was, and he won that race by an easy amount. So then there was another race in particular that I remember. It's winner pick performance points is how that racing goes. So obviously he won race after race after race because that's unstoppable. But one of the combinations he picked after track vote, because anybody can vote the tracks was a winner that picks the performance points, it was at Trial Mountain. And he picked Red Bull for that race. So aka Circuit 2011 before the Tomahawk was there, just anything goes. So he won that race by 2 laps. 2 laps. If I remember correctly, it was a 10-lap race. He won by 2 laps. With Boost on strong, and the dirty race in which you can wreck the leader even if you're lapped down. Won by 2 laps. Granted, nobody really in the dirty racing community necessarily raced Red Bull, so none of us knew what we were doing. I think I finished like 3rd in that race or something. I swear even on a straightaway, Doodle passed me like at 40 miles an hour faster than me. Granted, I didn't necessarily try to wreck him any, but others did, and he still won by 2 laps. So even in a dirty racing room, Doodle Monopoly is still probably the fastest driver in all of the, like USA. Will he end up being the fastest driver in America's reason? Who knows? But that brings to the next and final point. Races that aren't necessarily specific ones, but times in which I've just raced with drivers in general, and there's no specific one race I recall, because I've raced with some of these drivers quite a bit, and I've been on the same track as some of them, but not necessarily competing closely with them. The first one that I want to mention, though, is racing sometimes with Turismo-Lester. I've had a few competitive races with him, not just one instance, and then not just out of the blue instance, too, of like something weird like Doodle Monopoly doing a dirty race and winning by 2 laps. There was, I think, at least 2 or 3 races at Tokyo Expressway Central Outer Loop in which me and Turismo-Lester went toe-to-toe. I think I actually did specialty one of those as well. It's all unique in the description too, if I remember that one. And he also has a Twitch channel, so purposely I didn't specialty too many of those just because they've already seen live. But definitely check out his Twitch channel, and then I'll link my video in the description too. We had some good racing at one track. But another story with Turismo-Lester is, if y'all saw him in the more recent FIA stuff, he generally used a Viper. I've kinda always somewhat rooted for him in the events because he generally uses a Viper. I also root for all of the Americans because I'm American, and then I root for Dodds Lamb because Dodds Lamb. And he's technically in a Mopar too. He's in the Alfa Romero, at least in the previous FI events. But despite Alfa Romero technically being Mopar, I gotta be biased towards the Viper here for obvious reasons. But anyway, there was a Group 3 race at, I think it was Suzuka, the full circuit. And it was a daily race, so aka I ran it a few times back when they were truly daily races. I got paired with Turismo-Lester 4 or 5 different times, and I started between 2nd and 3rd every race. Turismo-Lester was always on pole, and he won every race in the Viper by, I think, at least 10 seconds every time. I also used a Viper because I generally do always use the Viper. So, what I'm getting at is it was technically a Mopar 1-2 finish with one of the best drivers in the world driving a Mopar with me in second. Granted, Turismo-Lester isn't officially on Team Mopar, but something that I've always said as well. If you race clean and have fun in a Mopar, then you're kind of an honorary Team Mopar member, especially when you're racing with me anyway. So, I'll definitely consider Turismo-Lester honorary Team Mopar. Because as far as I know, he's not on an actual team, like Doodle's on TRL, Hellfire's on FT, it's just like flat out threat, I think, maybe. They're a new team, but a really fast team. I think that's what they're called. And there's a whole heck of a heap of drivers on a whole heck of a heap of other teams as well. So then the next driver that I've had experience racing with, or Dez, who is on GT Planet and has been there for a long time. Again, there's not any specific one race that I've been with him, but I've raced against him a whole heck of a heap in various games, and he's generally faster than me in like all circumstances. But I do remember in some particular time trials in which I know I'm not going to compete with him in a race. I'm not going to compete with the vast majority of these drivers in races. But I sort of made it a personal goal to attempt to beat his time in kart time trials. Because it seems like he's always really fast with karts. Like, he's really fast with any vehicles, but also with karts. So somewhat like me in that aspect. Certainly not bad in necessarily anything. He's way better than me in the majority of all the things, but noticeably better in karts and that in particular. So, I actually did that, and from what I recall, I actually have a winning record in the personal goal. So that's cool too. I guess that's one of those weird flex but okay things. I can beat someone in a time trial but can't even come close in a race, but well, there's this race I'm seeing on screen. That was a decent race. He wasn't in that race, but still. And then the next driver, Gumball GCT, I think that's the correct acronym, but just Gumball, the the GT Academy champion, who also made it to F5 events too. I actually had a good race with him in Gran Turismo Sport Closed Beta. And by good, I mean entertaining. That particular race, well, that was the original PD Academy video. And I think that I remember, I think maybe where Dez might have been in that race too, but don't quote me on that. But some races in particular that I've actually somewhat raced against him is the times in which I made top 24 Superstars races. Seems like every time I made a top 24 Superstars race, I managed to end up getting near him and qualifying. Just him in particular, it seemed like. Nothing good or bad about that, it just kind of happened. So, as I said at the beginning of the video, drivers are definitely respectful, and especially when they're faster, I'm just going to let around. So, no fault to him, but it seems like every time I was on a decent lap, at least once, he would end up behind me, and then I just let him go. Am I mad about that? No, not whatsoever. But I will say, maybe in some terms, I actually helped him in some of the races as well. I was never in a top 24 Superstars race in the official championships, but still, that's just something to mention as well. Another minor note to mention too is he also lives in Kentucky now. I've always lived in Kentucky, so that may be another driver in which I root for. And then other drivers where there's not even really an experience to mention, but this I've raced against. I think I've raced against Defcon 96 before. I have raced against Dodge Lamb before. And I think I've raced against TGT Chandler before. He's actually on my friends list, if I remember correctly, so It's another really fast driver there. And honestly, there's a few drivers on the list I've never even heard of. No offense to them, but we'll see if they make a name for themselves in this event. And now to kind of my being biased instead of my just being telling a story, just because why not? Here's who I think will win the event. FT Nico R, who I have technically raced against too, but not anywhere close. I think overall he's going to win because the best drivers I think that compete with him are IOF-RACING, Doodle, Lloyd's Elite, but it seems like, at least to me, the most consistent out of those three have been Nico, Glass, Orma, Snow, and All Days. Which kind of proves a point too, because notice out of all the drivers I've mentioned, I've had stories about all of them, or at least mentioned like racing them or whatever. I've never even came remotely close. I've barely even seen Nico's car the entire time I've raced with him. He seems like he's literally almost the best driver, if not the downright best driver, by far in every track and car combination. Granted, there's some in which IOF is definitely the best, Doodle's definitely the best, but generally, when there's one driver that is the best, it seems like Nico is at least second or third best on every car and track that I've seen. To put it in perspective too, something that is similar, I didn't end up getting a race against him, but the kart race in which is on in the picture, I'm fine with karts, I'm not gonna lie, that's definitely my overall specialty. Nico ran 4/10 of a second faster in his qualifying time than I did. In the actual practice times, he ran 2/10 of a second faster. If I remember correctly, I was third in the entire Amerucas region with my practice time. Nico ran 2/10 of a second faster. And kind of ironically, too, about an hour before the races started, I was ahead of Nico's time, and he still managed 2/10 of a second faster. So yeah, overall I'm picking him to win, which is also me attempting to be unbiased. Who do I want to win? Any of the Amerucas, region drivers. Doodle, I guess, all in all, has the best chance of, like, USA. And by Amerucas, reason I mean, like, United States of, but I assume y'all got that. And then Dodge Lamb, because Dodge Lamb. Gumball, because Kentucky, but honestly I feel kind of different with Gumball than other drivers because he's already got his chance and took it and did well. I don't actually know like what happens if he were to win because he's already a race car driver, like sponsored with Nissan and stuff for the previous GT thing. Does he get all the perks of this when he's already gotten perks in the past? I really don't know how that would work if he won. And then also Turismo-Lester if he's in a Dodge again. Any drivers who's in a Dodge this time I'll root for too, but there's no way to know until that starts. But anyway, overall I'm going to be happy with whoever wins because I'm sure they all put in tons of work to get there, and I know from experiences it's not the easiest thing to do is to get better over time. It takes a long time to do that. And while I and quite a lot of people say aliens and all that and unworldly skill, nonetheless, it seems like every driver who's I know specifics about, either from GT Planet or their YouTube channel or combination of both or whatever, each and every one of the drivers have raced for at least 15 years on Gran Turismo. Quite a few of them are actual race car drivers, so there's no denying the work in which they put in to get here. I know I've said my fair share of criticisms that PD tries to make this be the only thing they sell, and they try to ignore all the rest of the negatives by selling the big fancy positive of the tournaments themselves, but by the ignoring the negatives part is true, but there's no denying the big fancy tournaments are awesome. I'm not downplaying the tournaments themselves when I say they are downplaying the other things. they deserve everything they get. Each and every one of the drivers have gotten there. And I hope all of them do as good in the racing as they can. Hopefully the racing stays clean and fair, and hopefully the balance of power is fair enough too. Or spy storage dodge. But, so that's that, folks. I sort of kind of have been on the track with probably more drivers that I've mentioned. Like, I know there's been times in which I've been on the track with Windfire and he's pulling me out of the water. And I think there probably been times in which I've raced with even some of the drivers whose names I can't necessarily remember off the top of my head who made it too. And there's tons of drivers who probably had the skill to make it too, just decided not to, like Monster Sport 71, who has his own thing being an actual driver coach. Like, I can't remember the exact specifics, but he's actually like a professional race car driver coach, like teaches you how to be a race car driver, so that's cool too. He would definitely have the skill to make it. There's GTRs, like race karts in the past. There's a lot of drivers I've raced with too that just had the skill to make it but didn't. But nonetheless, who made it deserves it. There's other drivers who deserve it too, but honestly may not need to make it, and they made their own decisions to not compete. And overall, I just hope whoever makes it enjoys themselves as much as possible. And whoever had the skill to that didn't is still perfectly fine with their decision in the end. And all more than anything, I just hope the racing is fun for everyone. That's ultimately the point, ain't it? Despite all of the underlying negatives that may not be shown, let's just enjoy what is shown and have some fun. Hopefully y'all can experience watching some of the drivers that I've been lucky enough to race with. And maybe, just maybe, y'all can be lucky enough to race with them in the future too if you haven't yet. Because it's definitely a joy in racing when you get to race with some of the best, even if they blow you out. And maybe, just maybe, you can get a lucky few times where you can actually go toe-to-toe and even beat them. Or they wreck you in a dirty lobby and win by 2 laps. Whatever the situation may be, it's all fun. Racing against those drivers, and it'll definitely be fun watching them all race against each other too on the biggest stage there has been so far. So I hope y'all have enjoyed this video, and I definitely hope y'all enjoy the stream itself. And again, I'll link all the special titans I mentioned in the description too if y'all want to enjoy them, if y'all haven't seen them yet or watch them again or whatever. And this is most definitely worth a yee-haw.